Welcome back to another episode of the RAG Report podcast with me, Sean Anderson. This is my daily bulletin show where I bring to you recruitment owners, advisors, suppliers, even investors around the world who are prepared to give up some of their time and expertise and share what the hell's going on in their life as we all work out this new digital world that we've been forced into. And by doing so, I'm hoping that we're all going to come out of this stronger by sharing and collaborating every single day. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by Amir Bormand. Amir is the managing director of Elevano, which is a specialist tech recruitment business headquartered in Southern California, USA. We're in the USA, and they specialize in recruiting techies, engineers into cloud-based environments. So anything from AWS all the way to DevOps. Me and Amir have had a relationship online for a while now. We've shared some messages on LinkedIn for about a year, I think. He's also a fellow podcaster, definitely a forward thinker, and someone I'm super excited to interview. It's late in the day here in the UK, so I've had to, well, it's 6 o'clock. It's not late, but I normally record earlier, so it's actually quite nice. It's the last thing I'm going to do today. So before I get into the chat with Amir, quick message from our sponsor, Rise Recruitment Ventures. You may have heard now, I'm mentioning these guys a lot. They are a recruitment investment business that are taking the expertise from growing and selling their own agency back in 2016 and now injecting capital, expertise, plans to the next generation. So they're looking at the guys that haven't even started an agency or the people that are in the early stages of growth who want to supercharge that to the point where they can plan to scale and exit. John and Alex aren't messing about. They're not working with everyone. They're looking at a very specific type of person. They say that the person they want to work with is someone that would be successful anyway, but they can help them get bigger and better faster with their help. If you think that sounds like you, then reach out to them via www.riserv.co.uk and they'll get in touch to have an introductory phone call. Right, back to the show. Amir, welcome to the RAG Report.
Thanks for having me on.
It's awesome to have you on. And in true RAG Report style, my first question, I'm a bit jealous you're in Southern California and the weather's better, but can you just paint the picture for our listeners what your life is like right now?
So probably like a lot of people, I am working from home. We have a almost 7-year-old daughter who likes to find ways to interrupt and intrude, but she doesn't know yet. And just trying to manage a flow, a schedule. It was really challenging, I think, the first couple of weeks going through this. And then finally, between my wife and what she's doing as a marriage family therapist, trying to figure out how to balance, when she can be on a call, when I can be on a call, just trying to come up to some normalized schedule was the biggest obstacle. I think now we're there. The daughter's first grade's finished, so now she's going to be completely free. So we're going to have to now go back and replan how to actually address, what we're going to do with that extra time she's going to want from us, apparently.
Well, that's, like I haven't got children. I've got a French bulldog that before this, I just whipped into the living room. My wife was lay on the sofa while the dog was lay next to her, both staring at me like, are you going to come out of that room at some point? I was like, not yet. But it's not normal, is it? Like, we've all worked from home, or most people have worked from home, whereas working from home when everyone's at home, it's a completely different dynamic, and one that I think we're all getting used to. Not sure everyone loves it or not. Are you? What's the state of play in Southern California right now? What's the law telling you can and can't do?
Yeah, so I mean, it's changing. I think what the law is telling us, and maybe what I'm comfortable with, are two different things. I think the law is telling us we can start going about a bit more. We Disneyland, we have Disneyland passes. My daughter loves going, and that's something that's been closed for several months with good reason. They're planning to open up, and we've actually been, my wife and I have been talking, what are we going to do? She's going to see her friends going, and, taking, a 7-year-old at that point into an environment where it's like, you're going to touch things, but hey, don't touch your face, don't touch your eyes, don't touch your mouth. That's a massive challenge. So we're trying to be very cautious in terms of, as things are opening up, what to expose her to. We're more concerned about her than us. Like, I could imagine, outdoor restaurant, the wife and I will do a date night, but I'm not sure our daughter will still probably end up like out in that environment until we kind of see how things are looking for numbers and whatnot.
We had, in the UK, the lowest number of deaths yesterday since lockdown. So since 23rd of March, I think. There was like 50 deaths, which we're talking there was about 1,000 deaths like 4 weeks ago. So it's coming down. Scotland, Wales, I think, or Northern Ireland recorded no deaths, which is good. So the signs are positive, and that's even with the lockdown being released. What I'm still yet to see is the restaurants, bars. That I think that in this country will take a long time to come back. There's probably a bit more opportunity for outdoor eating and drinking in LA than there is here, right? Or in California because of the temperature.
Yeah, the beaches, they've always been packed out here. Like, I mean, people they're really two camps: people who are really abiding by it and they're sticking to everything that's being told, and the other group that just doesn't care. And I was reading last night that Arizona's numbers are going through the roof, and they're already preparing for critical scale, and you look at that and you're like, well, what's going to happen here is I think gyms are starting to open up in the next week. Summer school programs are open. They're going to try to isolate kids in summer school, and I just don't understand yet like how all that dynamic's going to work. Again, I think everyone's going to make their own decision, but here we definitely have a let's push forward mentality and just see how it works out. And I know other countries, they're seeing their numbers dip while they're making those decisions. I guess our numbers aren't going through the roof the way they were maybe 2 months ago, but nonetheless, I don't think we're out of the clear. I don't see us getting to 50 deaths maybe per state for a while. I think it's going to take it's going to take us a process.
Potentially. Well, I hope it goes quick. Let's I think we've all had enough COVID chat for a while. So let's go back and let's talk about your agency. So according to LinkedIn, it says you're about 9 years old. So tell us the overview, short story of how you got started and why did you launch the business?
Yeah, so actually, my background is I came from software engineering, business intelligence. I was an engineer for the longest time. I got into running a BI consulting practice, and I got the sales bug, and I was like, "This is cool. Could I do this for myself?" And my brother's, a salesperson. We put our heads together. We were like, "Hey, let's give this a shot." But we started as a true BI engineering consulting company. We take projects, we deliver projects, and at some point, we started realizing that clients were asking us to help fill gaps of employees, and we had no idea what recruiting really was. We were like, well, is that like a project or you just need a body? Like we quite didn't get it. Yeah. And slowly realized we could make the same money without taking the risk on, which seemed really appealing. And before we knew it, we morphed into a recruiting company. So I think the last maybe 6-7 years, we've done only recruitment and staffing type work. So it's been a learning experience with zero recruiting experience previous to that. So we've been a little bit of trial by fire, but yeah, here we are.
That's awesome. That's really, I love that. Like how people say falling into the industry, like so many people, no one wakes up and says, I want to be a recruiter. Like no one has ever grown up going, I'm going to be a recruiter tomorrow. But we all fall into the industry in different ways. That I was in Australia. I landed as a backpacker, I was a school teaching backpacker that landed in Australia. Fucking sick of living out of a backpack. I hated the backpack. Like, I was like, yeah. I'd planned to go up the East Coast, and I was like, I can't do it. I've had enough traveling. So we got like really crappy hospitality jobs and all these different jobs. No offense to anyone, but I just hated it. And then one of my friends got a job in recruitment, and I was like, what is that? And then we went crazy in Melbourne to get a job. We just phoned every recruitment company and BD'd our way in. So I fell into it, but I almost forced my way into it. It's a weird one. So how long did you say since you turned into a true recruitment company it's been?
Yeah, I think the first 2 years or so, we were completely consulting work. And then we actually sat down one day and we started doing the math of, our P&L, and we were looking at what, maybe year 2, 3, we're still going to take work. We're still growing. And somebody was like, will you help us find a candidate, whereas we don't want to pay the $200 an hour consulting fees? And we're like, okay. And we did the P&L on what that would look like. And we're like, it's the same margin. It wasn't too dissimilar, but we didn't have to own the risk of actually delivering the project and dealing with chargeback of hours on a project where a client wasn't happy and rework and all that kind of nonsense. So we're like, hey, this seems like a good path. And I'm a technologist. I can still kind of dabble in that world, kind of ancillarily, even though I'm not going to be hands-on or anything. But it just seemed like an interesting path to take, and we thought maybe we could leverage the fact that I did have engineering background to our advantage a bit.
Yeah, how was that transition for you personally, going from doing the work to finding people that do the work?
Yeah, I think I relate well to the candidates. It's a different it's a different sales process. Like when you're selling a BI like project to somebody, a business intelligence project, it's a you're getting them to commit to the dotted line. They're releasing funds to fund a project, and you have a PO to bill against. With recruiting, I felt like the sales side of it didn't really start until you start looking for a candidate. Somebody just saying, "Here's an open job order," really it wasn't a sale to me. So it was until we
Well,
delivered the
unless
candidate.
you're on a retainer, you're not getting paid.
Unless you're on a retainer. Yeah. So that was a huge, eye-opening thing. We're like, okay, well, that's nice that, you're giving us an MSA. I was like, this is an MSA. Okay.
Yeah.
And this was a big difference for us of, an agreement previously was you're signing a $50,000 agreement for us to do work. And then now it's like, well, here's an opportunity. And it took a little time for us to really understand some of the nuances of where to look, how to look, but we kind of got it. And we haven't really looked back to go back to consulting, just because I think, again, looking at the P&L, it wasn't too dissimilar. And I still, have friends who are in the consulting industry, and we compare notes, and I don't know if their margins are much different than a recruiting company's, but obviously different IP that they are building versus us.
I'm interrupting this episode to bring to your attention our second sponsor. That's Odro. Odro is calling on the recruitment industry in absence of organized events to take part in what's called the Active Recruiter Challenge. The idea is that we'll all get together on the same day, Friday, the 10th of July, to run either a 10K or a half marathon. This is a combined effort from all recruiters to run from their homes and follow any route you want up and down the country. We're hoping that together we can raise money for a Teenage Cancer Trust. And in order to do so, we want all runners to contribute £25 in sponsorship. Fitness and charity, what a combination. To get involved, sign up to the Active Recruiters Club on Strava, then join the 10K or the half marathon from there. Strava will then track our time so that we can use them and find out how we're competing with our friends and colleagues. There's also a runner's pack with numbers and wristbands, which will be sent out from Odro once you get involved. Finally, see Odro's Active Recruiters blog for full details. Everything will be shared in a link to this podcast.
It took a little time for us to really understand some of the nuances of where to look, how to look, but we kind of got it, and we haven't really looked back to go back to consulting, just because I think, again, looking at the P&L, it wasn't too dissimilar. And I still have friends who are in the consulting industry, and we compare notes, and I don't know if their margins are much different than a recruiting company's, but obviously different IP that they are building versus us.
Yeah. I think there is, I've gone the other way. So I went from being a recruiter to a marketeer and running a marketing agency, right? And so the benefits are the same. I understand the industry. I can relate to the clients really well. But I realized very fast that we're doing a lot more work for less money than we did as a recruiter. Like, without a doubt, I could earn more money on my own just doing deals than I can building teams that have to deliver the projects. And then the same thing you've just said, the projects, the challenges, the timelines, there's always things in there that recruitment was actually more simple. Albeit I do enjoy getting paid from day one as opposed to waiting for no win, no fee mindset. So
how did you I'm just curious, when you go, I know you're asking me questions, but just curious for a second for you, is when you go sit down now and you're like, I have to convince the CEO of an agency to sign on the dotted line, what's the mentality difference versus trying to secure an agreement just to work on an opportunity back in your recruiting days?
That's a really good question. I think for me, in recruitment, I believed in myself, right? I used to back myself. I knew my agency was good, but I used to fucking back myself. I used to sit there and be like, look, I know I'm fully versed in what you're trying to do. I know exactly who you need. And I know I can solve this problem. I've done it time and time again. It was black and white, effectively. Whereas marketing is more of there is black and white, but there's a lot of gray in it as well. There's a lot of belief in it. There's a lot of vision in it. Because it's almost like, most people are looking for something they've never had. Everyone's typically recruited someone. Everyone knows what that process is going to end up like. But when it comes to marketing, in our sector, it's crazy for me now in COVID, because I'm looking at a sector that more people are talking about marketing, branding's on the topic, content's going through the roof. 3 years ago when I was banging on about Hoxo, it was like, I was getting calls all day off people going, what the hell are you talking about? Like education calls and no interest in buying it. So it was like, it's amazing how much people have changed. So I hope I've had an impact on that by telling people what I thought was coming, and it's now coming. And I also think now, like my vision now, 3 years ago was that agencies needed a marketing play. Now I think every recruiter needs a marketing play. Now I think it's like, is it a desk level? It's so important. It's not just at a company level, it's both. So it's like, you know, training your recruiters now, you can train them on the recruitment job, but have you got a marketing social media plan around what they do? Because it's, you know, your podcast, your content, these things actually contribute to the, whereas I was billing just under £1 million on my own without any marketing play and didn't need it. Whereas in a few years, I think you'll need it. I think you'll have to have it. So
I agree.
I guess to answer your question, I'm asking for a bigger commitment up front now. It's a solution. Yeah. It's a solution sale. It's a team. It's a plan. But there's also, I think that it's like for the guys we work with, they get it. They get the future's coming. So it's just about making sure that we're the right partners to be on the journey with them. Do you know what? I love how you've turned the tables. Maybe you should just interview me for the next half an hour. Right?
There you go.
But look, so talk us about the structure of Elevano. Like you mentioned you and your brother. Is it just you two? Is there more people? How's it structured?
Yeah. We were more people. And I think the one thing that I've always been cognizant of, you know, we always represented the lion's share of revenue, which has always been the biggest concern through the, you know, 7 years of being a full-on recruiting company. And we've always been trying to figure out how to scale that. Obviously, I think when someone leaves a successful company, whether it's, you know, Michael Page or an S3, and they go start off, they have seen the template of what they're going to do. For us, it was more like, what did Amir not like when he was a recruit, when he was being headhunted? Yeah. And let's just do the opposite. So there's a little bit of trial and error figuring things out. And we've always been trying to, you know, I'm an engineer, so I wanted to see if it's scalable before I scale it. So I've always been trying to find and tinker. And while the business was good, you know, you're not going to fix what's not broken. You know, money's coming in. And I always thought in the back of my head, when something happens, when there's the next recession, I'm going to use that as the pit stop to address some things that I know are going to change our ability to scale moving forward. Because I've learned what does and does not work. But when the plane's in the air, you're not gonna have it land, because it just takes so much fuel to get it back up again. So we've actually kind of used this opportunity. I think I mentioned to you a couple of weeks ago, I reached out to you that, you know, we're trying to, you know, fix some of the nets that we know there were some glaring issues that were obvious that we had identified. But again, you know, right now it's just the two of us. There's a third person, but, you know, there's not a lot of business being transacted in the US at scale. So we're like, we can handle pretty much anything being thrown our way at this point until we see the bump up.
A message from our final sponsor, Vincere. Vincere, if you don't know, is the all-in-one CRM ATS platform for recruitment and staffing businesses globally. Now, I first heard about Vincere, it feels like it was about a year or so ago. And this business came out of nowhere from speaking to recruitment agencies. And I've always asked them what CRM they use when dealing with them from a Hoxo perspective. The same players usually used to come up, but this word Vincere kept coming up, and I was like, okay, I've heard this 2, 3, 4, 5 times. It must be an interesting brand. And now I hear Vincere almost as much as any other brand out there. So I did my research, and what I love about Vincere is they're looking to partner and invest in the same types of organizations that Hoxo do, which is the future high growth recruitment business, what I call progressive owners. These guys are putting a product out there to level the playing field and help smaller businesses and those growing to edge over their competition. It's proven to be a disruptor in the space. More and more people are using this software globally. They recently broke into the G2 Crowd Momentum Grid as the market leader on stellar reviews from users. So the recruiters that are using Vincere are raving about it. They've got 5 global offices, headquartered in Vietnam. So if you've got an office anywhere in the world, they've got this follow the sun methodology. So the support is absolutely top notch. And also by sponsoring the RAG, they're giving a unique offer to our listeners. So if you're listening and you want to get involved, go to Vincere, that's vincere.io/rag, where they're going to be offering you a unique exclusive deal because you listen to the RAG podcast. Get in touch today.
There's not a lot of business being transacted in the US at scale. So we're like, we can handle pretty much anything being thrown our way at this point until we see the bump up.
What when you're thinking about, so you mentioned a really interesting point there that you flipped what you didn't like, right? And I think that's so clever. And, it's probably where tech recruiters do really well coming from a sales background at times, because they force shit through that a techie wouldn't, right? They can negotiate on their behalf. They can push those salaries. They can, they can do things that don't necessarily come natural. But also on the flip side of that, they can struggle to build rapport. They can struggle to understand the challenges. They can struggle to engage them in the first place. So how are you using your background and personality and style as in your own advantage? What things have you done that's worked so far?
Yeah. So basically, I think, at our peak, I think we were 8 people, 9 people. And I think the basic philosophy of the organization was, I said the biggest thing I didn't like was I always felt that I was a transaction for somebody. You could feel it. Like you could just tell, like you said, somebody's trying to push it through. They're trying to convince you. And it's like, listen, I'm not going to make a decision because you're trying to make me make a decision. I have to make the right decision. And now as a recruiter, you're like, just make the decision. My way. It doesn't always work. But when you're in that seat and you understand that, I think the one thing I've always tried to communicate to staff was, listen, they're not going to make a decision because you're going to push them. If you push them, there's a good chance they're going to really firm up and actually push back and not even re-listen to you. So partner, and sometimes if it's not the right role, take it and just walk away and let the person know that there's a better opportunity and they're going to trust you for, and they'll come back. So I think there is a common thing was just do the right thing, and maybe it all comes back full circle.
The reason I'm smiling there is I had quite a similar style. Right? I was probably more pushy and punchy than you come across, but I remember there was one guy in the market, and I used to pride myself on genuinely like making quick decisions and saying, look, I don't think you're right for this job, and I'm not. Yep. There's a lot of agencies that would hold on to candidates and say, yeah, we'll represent you, and just to cover the market, and then they wouldn't send them, and they'd only send the ones they wanted. And everyone thinks they're in for this, and in the contract market in London, it's very, very right. And, I'm not saying I've never done that, because that'd be a lie. But on the whole, especially towards the end of my days, I was very clear, like, you know what? You're not right for this job. I'm not going to put you forward. And I remember putting this candidate I was about to put him in the mix, and I went and met him, and I pulled him out. And I said to him at the end of the meeting, I'm really sorry you're not right for the job. I told him who the client was and everything. I was like, you're not right. And he said, why? I said, the client's going to eat you alive. He's like, what do you mean? I said, I guarantee when you meet this hiring manager, big, angry Scottish guy, he's told me what he wants. I've placed people time and time again. I'm really sorry. You're too nice. You're going to get eaten alive. Anyway, he's like, I'm so pleased you said that. Like, thank you so much. Shook my hand, like really, really like honest. Anyway, he phoned up another agent the same night, got his CV across, got the fucking job. So I was like, I'm walking around like dead proud of myself.
What are you going to do?
Really proud of myself. Just told him, the honest truth, he's not going to get it. Anyway, the next week, he's got the job. And
damn.
Yeah, you know what, though? He still said, I really respected you for it, but I didn't want to take your word for it. So I was like, fair play. So it came back.
It happens, though. Yeah, it happens. And I don't know. Like, I think for the most part, most of my recruiting experiences are really positive. Like, I had some really great recruiters I worked with, and there was a couple that, I'd always, if I had a referral, I'd send it to them just because I know they take care of you. And I think now that you're on this side of the world, it's just realizing that that person has such a big life decision to make. And if you were in that seat, you'd want to make the best life decision for you. And it might go against you sometimes, but it's like any sale. If you're even in a services oriented, situation you're in now, you're selling a solution, that it just might go against you. Like, you can't do anything about it. And I think as a recruiter, because the fee is so big and you put so much effort, you start weighting so much emphasis on just getting it across the line. And I think sometimes we lose focus of, well, what is the right thing for this person? Like, getting it done. Will the client be happy? Will the candidate be happy? Will they both come back? And I think sometimes that's when the heat of the moment and you're trying to hit numbers, it's a challenge, man. Like, this is not an easy industry.
no, in bigger companies with targets and, management layers, that can just be pushed down and down and down. What works? So is there a particular way in which you think your style or your background helps you actually open the door to candidates? Is there a way in which you've crafted that you don't need to tell us your ins and outs of all your secrets, but still, I think.
Sure. At one point, I wanted to test the theory, and I said, I dislike the fact that every recruiter always said, I have a client. And I said, they distrust recruiter candidates that they're going to go around them. And I go, my thinking, my hunches, from my days, even friends as an engineer still, I go, no one does that. I said, it really does not. It's like a folk tale or it's some kind of myth that people go around you. Maybe percentage, yes. But I said, I want to test if we start emailing candidates and we fully disclose everything up front, just in the initial email, and say, this is the client, this is what they're looking to pay, this is the role, this is the address, like as much information as we can get them, as though we literally were an ARPO and we were embedded and we were working internal as an internal recruiter. Amazingly, the numbers were crazy good. Like, obviously, if somebody went around us, they went around us, but that would have been the type of person we were dealing with anyways.
Depending on the relationship with you with the agency.
Exactly.
Again, as well, like if I'm recruiting now, like I've got an agency on a role for me now, and the candidates that they've represented message me on LinkedIn during the process to say, hey, like I'm looking kind of thing. But because I've got such a good relationship with the agent, like for me, even if that, as soon as I know he's spoken to them, I would still respect him anyway because that's his job. But I get that. And how's that responded? Has that been positive for you?
Yeah, we actually would tell our clients, we say, this is what we're going to do. So they were like that. No other recruiting agency is doing that. And we were like, yeah, we're gonna do it. Just FYI, if somebody comes through that comes direct, I want to be able to show you that we might have reached out first. And they said, we understand. We'll give you credit. We're not trying to battle you on that. And again, being in the tech sector, the candidates are such a difficult thing to land anyways. They're willing to pay, so it's not that they're going to hold back the fee. So I think became an extra tool in the toolbox that we used, and depending on the client, depending on the relationship, we'll use that still, and depending on how quickly we need to move, and again those things. But it was just interesting.
What about platforms? Because obviously LinkedIn is the platform of choice for most, but I'm not convinced all techies are spending that much time on LinkedIn unless they are looking.
Now, the thing is, LinkedIn, they're on it. They just won't respond, which is amazing. They see it. But as an engineer, they're like, well, it's not relevant to me. I don't need to respond. So they just don't think they need to respond if it's not relevant. And I think the big problem with LinkedIn for us, particularly on the engineering side, is they only turn it on when they're looking. And at that point, you're already late. There are 15, 20 interviews. They're going to be saturated with the schedule. To even get that candidate to the table might not be worth our effort. So I think for us, we use Twitter quite a bit. We DM quite a few candidates. I actually landed a guest on the podcast from a DM that I reached out, and we just had a conversation. She was like, I'll be on. I was like, she's a VP of engineering at a pretty big software company. And I think there's other platforms for LinkedIn, but I think honestly, I still see email for us for the engineering sector. Email is still king for them.
That's crazy.
It's on their terms. They look at it. They've told me, I've seen your email. I liked your email. I'll get back to you whenever I'm looking. And they're like, I have a folder. I'm going to stick you in that folder of the recruiters that I'll reach out. And
organized people.
Yeah, that's all I can ask for is that when you're looking, just come back to me. I'll appreciate that more than you just whatever right now. So
that is a level of patience I think a lot of recruiters struggle with. But that is where you're winning that space. If you can live like the candidate, you can understand the candidate, then massive. I mean, it's huge.
Dude, we crush our the secret sauce behind it. I can't get into it, but we get close to 90% email open rates on our candidates and close to about 55 to 60% response rate. So
wow.
So we don't tend to recruit, we don't tend to email blast anyone. Like we don't go, here's 500 candidates, we handpick them. The message is very carefully crafted to each one. And I think, again, because we know the funnel and what the top of the funnel is what we need, we just don't need that many messages to get to the candidates that we need to.
Mate, it's amazing. In terms of the content, the community side I think that's one area that techies do tend to think about is, meetups, Slack channels.
Yep.
There's a lot of innovation and collaboration in the space. It has to be, right, for the Silicon Valley and all these areas to be flourishing. So what I know you've created a podcast. How have you found, or what's your experience been in terms of producing content and building communities?
Yeah, I love the podcast. I mean, the Talent Tango, we did a handful of podcasts. We did daily, so we were recording like you daily. My brother and I were in it, and it became a lot. And the feedback was there's too much content. And what we started looking at was going, are we really providing value? Like we probably had 5, 6 other guests that we just said we need to pin this until we really understand how to craft better value for the community. Because I was like, yes, we're recording, it's all fun. I love talking, interviewing is great, but unless the right value is being found, I didn't see a reason to push. And I think the one thing that I saw was there's a common question that the group's trying to understand. You do a great job with knowing as a recruiter what agency owners are looking for. And I think with a lot of the talent podcasts, interviewing somebody just for the sake of interviewing doesn't really add any value to that community. There's got to be a distinct driver, distinct, value they get for you to continue. So we kind of put a pin in it, and we've been recrafting what that podcast will come back at. I mean, we did get a decent, when we did it, we were getting a couple hundred listens a week an episode, and we enjoyed it. And you mentioned the compound effect of recording daily. We saw that. So as we were releasing daily 10, 15-minute segments, we saw a big spike, but then it just didn't fit for me.
The one thing I do think though is 200. Let's just say it's 200 people, right, a day listening a day all week. If you line them up in the street, it's a really substantial amount of people, right?
Yes,
you fill a hall of 200. There's like 200 people turned up. I go and speak I spoke at the Recruitment Expo, 250 people. The photo makes me look like I'm on stage, but yet when it's a number, like I had a guy today message me going, Sean, I'm only getting 500 plays on my podcast per week. I was like, how many episodes? You went 1. I was like, that's fucking awesome. 500 a week. Get them all in a room now and take a photo. You look like the don in your market. So it is amazing how, I don't know, LinkedIn at the moment, I think, and just views, the sheer reach of what we can achieve by, I could put a picture of my dog up and get 30,000 views in a day on LinkedIn. That actually, I think, affects how people see the value of the audience that is, sometimes it's just vanity. Whereas a super engaged small audience, in my opinion,
absolutely
is super valuable.
I think what's interesting about the podcast is a lot of people are trying to figure out, I mean, the biggest game that we're playing as recruiters is we're trying to get somebody on the phone just to listen to our voice, right? With a podcast, essentially, if somebody's listening, they've heard your voice. Now they might not, it's the macro, it's the long tail. They might not respond. They may never respond, but at least now your voice, your thoughts, your IP, whatever it is in their mind. They know who you are. And how many, like you said, the 500, that's pretty darn good off your first episode. Like how long would it take you to talk to 500 people and have them just hear an elevator pitch about you? It'd take you a long time.
Unbelievable.
That's phenomenal. Yeah, tell that guy to keep going, whatever he's doing.
Yeah, trust me. I said that to him today, and he was like, he knows if he's listening, he will be. He'll know what I'm talking about. So in terms of, have you looked at anything online, like social communities or anything around meetups or events? Because there's a thriving sector in where you're based.
Yeah, that's our area we hadn't done a lot. We were general tech recruiting for the longest time, and I think it became very difficult to say what area you're going to focus. To build community, you need to be more narrow, and I think that's been the one thing the last couple of months we've been focusing on is how do you get narrow so that you can produce one type of content to fill the need for one community. You can't be a little bit of everything to everybody, then you're just lost. So I think that's really where our focus has been, is to find out what voice, and again, going back to the podcast, we'll bring it back along with the technical podcast, just because, again, it's got to fit the community. The pieces have to fit together to be worthwhile to do. But I think community, to me, I know in the UK, a lot of recruiting companies do meetups, and you see it on their websites and everything. And it's interesting to me is I actually think the UK market is far more advanced in terms of some of their tactics than we are in the US. And I think it's because of the concentration. You guys have to survive. And I think you guys are probably like a year ahead at least.
Look, there's people in the UK now opening US offices and then raving about the way it's running. Like, they can take a guy in the UK billing 200,000 and he's instantly billing $500,000 just by doing the same job. And
Yep.
I think the sheer competition over here, like, you got 60 million people in a country half the size of California,
Yep.
and you've got 40,000 recruitment agencies. There's 9,500 agencies in the city of London, and if you look down the street in any direction, there's a co-working office with recruiters in it. Like, it's everywhere, right?
For sure.
So, but yeah, that's what I love about it. It's thriving, it's bustling. Everyone's trying to make their way, and that competition breeds quality and new ideas and innovation. And yeah, I've got a few clients that before we even met them were already really strong in the event scene. I think taking it online is where they've struggled. The offline is more natural. It's more, it's what they've always done. I think COVID, like, we've got one client that I think they've had over 5,000 attendees to webinars in COVID, like candidate attendees.
Wow,
they recruit PAs and EAs into the private equity market. And, they got Tony Blair's PA, the ex-Prime Minister of the UK's old PA on a webinar. And they've done all these cool things. And they're getting, like, last week, 991 candidates on a webinar. That's community. That's a real. Every candidate has got the same job title, pretty much. I mean,
interesting.
What you said to me before then was so, as if you were speaking my language. Like, the more niche you go with this, I think the long term you'll win. Like, I can see why, if you've recruited 5, 6, 7 things and you're making money, you're so scared to, especially even if it's just your online view. You're so scared to narrow that down and potentially turn other people off. But, at some point, long term, you'll win because you'll have that repeatable process. You'll have the community, you'll have the authority. And you every time you get vacancies, you'll be able to recycle. The work you've done in the past will come back into play. But I think it's interesting. I don't think offline you need to go as niche straight away. Online, I think if you can be online niche, offline, do whatever you want behind the scenes. You don't have to shout about
recruiting's recruiting. Yeah. Recruiting's recruiting. I think I think the recycling the candidate bit is really where the power of having some scope of what you're doing is important. Because let's say just in technology, there's 30, 40, 50 different types of roles. And once you start recruiting in 10, 15, you never recycle the same candidates. And I think that's where, I think if you're slightly more focused and disciplined and saying, I'm just not going to run, I start calling it's a unretained contingent search is really what it is. When the guy's like, go recruit X and you haven't done it for 6 months, it's a retained search for them. You're just getting paid if you place. So I think that recycling of the candidates is something in the US we don't do as well. But I do think the online niching is really where we're focused on as well, because I think that's where if you establish brand, and typically what I've seen brand in our industry here is large companies in the US have brand. Many small companies don't get to brand. Like, sure, Tech Systems, Robert Half, Randstad, they all have brand because they're just so big. But how many companies are really well known for what they do? A company of 5 or 6, that's really difficult. Are they really the first person you go, I need this engineer, these guys crush it, let's call them? That never happens. Nobody knows that you're the expert in your field.
But they can, if you put the time and effort in. You've got the opportunity then, haven't you? The opportunity's there.
Sure. Yeah. Yelp lets the donut shop mom and pop 30 miles off the road, have a line out the door on the weekend because the word of mouth is there, the online presence there. So why can't a recruiting company have the same effect of being known for just one particular thing? And they'll ask you, hey, you do this. Do you also work on these? You're going to say yes. You're not going to say no anyways. So you just want to open that door a little bit easier.
Yeah, it's then the danger of being a product of your own success and really being vanilla. And then but there's a balance to it. I completely agree. It sounds like you've got a similar futuristic thought process around the sector to what I have. So that's my final question. What does the future of Elevano look like? How do you see your business evolving post lockdown?
Yeah, I think what I'd like to see from us is have that online niche focus where when somebody comes to the website, they can't tell we do recruiting. They just go, this is a repository of content, and they also have jobs. What is it that they do? Oh, okay. They happen to be a recruiting company. To me, that would be that would be my ideal. And I think that's kind of what we've been sowing some of the nets in the last couple of months, focusing on, is to get to the point where we know which horse we're going to bet on, and kind of go that direction.
Do you see headcount growth being the plan, or is it more around tech and automation?
So I think we will add headcount. I think as a recruiting company, we have to. I mean, I think the automation, there's a lot of the HubSpots and all that stuff that help with getting some scale of automation. But I still think, AI is going to make it a big impact, but I think we're ways off before it's actually tangible. And most of the people we recruit for are trying to automate themselves out of jobs, interestingly. So it's an interesting view of it, but I definitely think we'll add headcount.
All right. Well, look, Amir, thank you so much for taking the time. You've got a busy day ahead, I'm sure. I've really enjoyed it. I feel like your approach is definitely different to a lot of the people I speak to the industry itself. It's a bit like, looking at how Uber disrupted the taxi service. The guys who run in taxi ranks were probably not very technical, yet techies come in and transform that industry. And I think there's a lot of people looking at our space now saying, I've been on the receiving end of this process. How can I disrupt it? And there's a million and one tech companies coming out that are trying to do it differently. But actually, I like the fact you're still doing the job, just with a slight different angle, with a different approach, with a different mindset. And I can see why people will respond. I'm definitely going to want to pick this back up in a few months when everything's a bit more settled. I want to dig in again and have a deeper conversation as to where we are in the future.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
No, loved it. Guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Slightly different angle today. Amir is, I'm sure, open to chats on LinkedIn if you guys want to reach out. And look, if you're enjoying this show, I ask for one thing, and it's my vision for the whole of the RAG podcast is to educate and support and bring together the global recruitment industry. So we've got a guy in Southern California, and there'll be someone in Australia listening to this tomorrow. That's the beauty of what I'm trying to do. And by sharing this out to your network, to people you trust, who you think will benefit, then it's going to keep growing exponentially all the time. So please do get on there and share that to people that need this advice and these news stories every day. I'll be back again tomorrow with more insights. In the meantime, please do stay safe, and I'll see you soon.